and you're moving from place to place. Good morning, good morning, morning, good morning.
Welcome back to the morning show on Tobago Updates Television. I am Adanna Combie, and we continue conversations this morning in studio with our guest, and we're speaking with Dr. Paul Crooks, a veterinarian, and we're speaking about the highly pathogenic avian influenza, H.P.A.I, an outbreak. And so we want to get the information. What does this mean? And we want to get the information as it relates to how it impacts and affects our lives here in Tobago. Good morning and welcome.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Right. So we're talking about the H.P.A.I outbreak, right? Tell us what this is about, the type of animal it affects, and how it impacts our lives in terms of consuming and, relating with the specific animal.
All right. So there's a lot to unpack. First, let's start with the word pathogenic. What does that mean? So we have highly pathogenic viruses, bacteria, fungal agents, and then we have low pathogenic organisms. Pathogenicity is the ability of an organism to cause disease. That doesn't mean it causes a severe disease. So you might have a cold virus that's passing around everybody in school. Certainly if you have school children, they catch everything. Everybody catches it, but it's mild. If anything, sneezing for a couple of days, may stay home, may not, may be good enough to go to school with no major issues. That may be a highly pathogenic virus because it causes disease in so many of the school kids. However, it's low virulence. Virulence is severity of disease. Typically what we see though is most organisms that are pathogenic or very pathogenic or very much able to cause disease are also very virulent and cause severe disease. This particular outbreak, it's been over the last 4 years or so that we've been seeing increases in the numbers of cases worldwide of this strain. This is H5N1 again, and I know a lot of people would have heard of H5N1 many years ago, maybe 20 years ago at this point, where there was a fear of it becoming a pandemic, where there were human cases reported. And we know that there is a possibility, though very, very, very slim, of this virus moving from an affected animal to now an infected person. For those cases, and that's the first thing I want to start with, for those cases, first of all, it is very uncommon. And usually, if a person becomes infected with this virus, at least as of right now, if a person becomes infected with this virus, that person typically is a very high-risk person, perhaps a child or an elderly person or someone who has an immunocompromised system, maybe is an HIV positive person, maybe is in chemotherapy. That person is at a much higher risk of becoming infected. But we still use the term highly pathogenic avian influenza because we're specifically, more than anything else really, looking at birds, avian influenza. Now, the influenza viruses, that family of viruses, is known for its ability to evolve over time. Many years ago now, there was a swine flu outbreak, H1N1, and we as vets were kind of like, well, let's stop calling it swine flu because it's not swine flu. The virus originated in pigs, but really when we traced back, we realized that it didn't originate in pigs, it originated in people. And what happened was a farmer had the flu virus, dealt with his pigs while sick, gave the pigs the flu virus, and then the pigs changed the virus in their bodies and gave it back to the family. And that's how that virus came about. So the fear of a person becoming infected currently with this strain, given the ability for the virus to evolve or change as it infects different species, is still very, very low. But the disease causes severe mortality, deaths in birds. You might find that up to 50% of birds die at once. Here in Trinidad and Tobago, and particularly in Tobago where we don't have large poultry operations that have tunnel ventilation and fans across the board and droplets misting from the air to decrease the temperature. If the temperature goes up very, very high in a pen, you might see 50% of birds die. Here in Tobago, you might see 50% of birds die, and you call the vet and you say, what's going on? Why are all my birds dying? It might be heat exhaustion. But with this disease, highly pathogenic avian influenza, you can find 50% of birds die in a very short space of time, whether they be layers or broilers, whether you have ducks, geese. Now, how are these birds introduced to this virus? They're introduced by exposure to droplets from an infected animal. Now, the problem comes where we know that wild waterfowl, in particular ducks and geese and so on, that fly overhead, pelicans, seagulls, they tend to migrate and move the virus all over the world. Here in Trinidad and Tobago, we are part of a migration route. And so it really is most likely not a question of if we will become infected or have an outbreak, but when we'll have an outbreak.
So it is inevitable because of that migration route that where we stand.
Almost certainly.
And when that happens, so now when it happens, the birds are now infected. What is our situation now?
All right. So there have been outbreaks in Florida, in the US. There have been outbreaks in Canada. There have been outbreaks in Cuba, Brazil, Argentina, Belize. So it is all around us. Right now, we've not had any reports, but it is even possible now that some of the wild birds that are coming here that we may not even see have the virus already and are getting sick already, maybe dying already. But let us say that a farmer, and this is what we will try to do through stakeholder consultation and training, we want the first responders, the people who might first encounter this disease, to be able to recognize it and say, look, I need to tell somebody this is happening. The first thing that would happen is that farmer would encounter perhaps dead birds, maybe. Sometimes the birds have neurological disease. You might see that they can't walk properly. The legs may be extended out to the side. If they are alive, you might see difficulty breathing, gasping breaths. They may appear to hyperventilate, breathe very rapidly. Again, it could look like heat stress. If the disease, like in human medicine, manifests with coughing and sneezing, which it may not, you will see that, of course. You will hear the birds and making noises as their air sacs are filled with maybe pus or fluid. So these are the kinds of signs that farmers should look out for. Now, in any system, particularly where there's an intensive rearing, where you have many, many animals crammed together, if they are very stressed, they could show signs of illness because there are always bacteria and viruses circulating, and when an animal is stressed, the immune system is suppressed, so now this animal is going to show signs of illness where it wouldn't otherwise. So again, what we're looking for is that higher mortality than your normal. So let's say you have 1,000 birds and you normally get 5 of them dying every day, right? Which may happen in some cases here. We've seen that many. But now you've gone up to, you found 200 dead per day, today. Then that raises a red flag. That's above your normal. Now it may not be, that is avian influenza, but that is when you reach your vet. Now, in terms of management of a disease outbreak, once the vet is involved at that point, we have to now say, come and examine and say, is this likely to be avian influenza? If we determine it is, then we have to try to confirm. In the meanwhile, we lock off trade from that farm. Until we get confirmation, we don't take any action to maybe destroy the birds, but ultimately that may happen, where the decision is taken that all these birds have to be destroyed because we don't want to spread the disease. Now, you're not only talking about if the farm has an outbreak, you're not only talking about wild birds bringing the disease. Now you have a farm here on the island that is a source. And then you may have a farmer who drove his vehicle right into the pen or who walked with his boots into the pen with these birds, and then takes those same boots and goes and checks his neighbor who also has chicken. And now you end up with a situation where this virus moves from one farm to another on the island because of our actions. So what would happen, because this is a major public health situation, there's a potential risk for disease spread to human, although very, very low. What's more important is its negative impact on the poultry industry. So we really want to control that spread of disease. So in the case of this disease, it is a notifiable disease. A lot of people get involved. You have the emergency management team that comes out. You have the police, maybe the defense force, who are going to enforce that you cannot leave this 3.5 kilometer zone with any poultry products. You're going to have a team that comes on with disposable boots and disposable coveralls. The birds will be euthanized. They'll have to be disposed of in certain prescribed ways to avoid that spread.
And I know you're talking about, when you talk about, you brought it right down to home in terms of the farmer, using his boots, and he goes to the neighbor. He might get into his van and he might drive somewhere, let's say to the supermarket, to do a delivery with his same boots, walk into the supermarket. I go into the supermarket after and I walk behind him. And so the spread can be so rapid. Is there going to be any sort of public education drive to have conversations, not just with farmers, because I believe the population needs to be aware of this situation as well, and to understand the possibility of how rapid the spread can be? Is there a public education drive that is going to take place, or any type of consultation with stakeholders, and just to inform the public as to how this is happening and how we should treat with it?
Yeah, actually, yes, that is being planned now. Because we do expect that we will eventually have a confirmed case, at least one confirmed case on a farm of highly pathogenic avian influenza. We expect it to come soon. Globally, at least up to 2023, 14 million birds have died because of this new outbreak, right? So from 2020 to 2023, we've seen that increased number above the normal, what we expect to be the normal level of occurrence, and that's called an epidemic. So we've seen, or an outbreak. So we've seen this increased number of deaths attributable to this virus, and consequently, over 250 million, 250 million birds have been killed to prevent disease spread or limit disease spread. That means that you're going to have increased food prices, decreased food security, and in the case of Trinidad and Tobago right now, we're being impacted because we can't import chickens from places where we would have imported before, because those areas are positive for this disease, and we want to, as far as possible, keep it out of Trinidad and Tobago. So now again, we have to find ways to rely on our local production and protect our local industry, because this is where we feed ourselves, because we have now less ability to rely on those international suppliers. So yes, we plan to do training, that first responder training. We're working with the ministry and we're trying to get it done. In Trinidad, they have done stakeholder consultation already. Recently, we did a stakeholder consultation for African swine fever here in Tobago, because African swine fever, similar to avian influenza, is a disease that will cause, basically every pig that gets infected with African swine fever will die here in Trinidad and Tobago. It does not affect humans. There's no risk there. However, that viral organism is so bad, even in sausage or any pork product, even if you think it's cooked or prepared, could still carry the virus. People have carried African swine fever virus from country to country in sandwiches. And this is why when you go to the airport, you'll see customs has up signs, no plants, no animal products, and so on. These are the reasons why. So we did an African swine fever training already, and we want to do one on avian influenza as well.
Well, Dr. Crooks, that was a mouthful there, giving us a lot of information, things that sometimes we take for granted, we don't even know is happening, in our environment. And so I'm so happy that we had that conversation, and also that the public education is going to happen, the training is going to take place, and the awareness is going to be heightened for us as well here in the Tobago space, Trinidad and Tobago as well. And so we look forward to the rollout of that information. We look forward to the training, and we do hope that all the stakeholders are able to, put some strategy in place to contain as much as possible this occurrence. As you mentioned, it will happen. So I'm happy that you are at least ahead of the happening, and that you're now at the position to implement strategies. So I'm looking forward to getting more information on that to see where we go with that. Thank you so much. We've been speaking with Dr. Paul Crooks as we speak about the H.P.A.I. outbreak that is inevitably going to happen here in Tobago. And of course, strategies are being implemented to ensure containment as well. Ladies and gentlemen, we have to go for a short break before we continue conversations here in studio with our guest. And of course, before we go, we invite you to help us. Share the live, share the live, share the live. We'll be right back.